الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين. أما بعد, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala tells us in His glorious book in Surah Ash-Shura, chapter 42 and verse 21. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أم لهم شركاء شرعوا لهم من الدين ما لم يأذن به الله ولولا كلمة الفصل لقضي بينهم وإن الظالمين لهم عذاب أليم. Or have they partners who have ordained for them a religion to which Allah has not consented? But if not for the decisive word, it would have been concluded between them. And indeed, the wrongdoers will have a painful punishment. Now, this is a rhetorical question from Allah. He's asking man, asking people who come up with laws and legislation outside of Allah's legislation. He's asking them, do you have other partners that Allah has sanctioned, that allowed them to legislate on His behalf? The answer is, it's a rhetorical question, is no. Allah Ta'ala is the only one who is qualified to legislate a religion, a way of life for man. Man is not qualified to make laws for himself. Not in the critical way of life thing. And today, inshallah, I want to go through 3 points as to why man is not qualified to legislate. The first one is the legislator cannot be a person because everybody's knowledge is lacking. Nobody has a complete knowledge. You know a little bit, you miss quite a bit. So if you don't have a complete knowledge of the human psyche, of human nature, what works for everyone, if you don't have that knowledge, when you come up with a law, that law is going to fall short. It's going to have side effects. And you see in civil law where you have, the initial law is 1 page, the amendment is 400 pages. Because, there's an unintended consequence, something, we need to kind of amend it and say, okay, in this case, do this. And then they find something else that's wrong. Then they keep amending, because man does not have the knowledge. When Allah gives a legislation, there is no need for amendments. It's perfect from the beginning, and it works for everyone, in every place, in every age, because Allah has that full knowledge. He created us, He knows what is best for us, so He is the only one qualified to put legislation of how we should be living, how we should be acting, and not delegate that to any other person. If you have a very expensive machine, and it's very complex, you don't go to just your friend, any friend that you have, just because you like them. They're not qualified to, if there's a problem with it, you have to go back to the manufacturer. Because if you start tinkering with it, you're going to break it. So you always go back to the manufacturer for something that's very complex and very valuable. You don't give it to anyone. So this is kind of just a small example of you always go back to the manufacturer. And we as humans, we're the most complex of Allah's creation. We have to go back to Allah. He is the creator. He put the manual that we're supposed to live according, and that's the best for us. The second point is when people put legislation, when they come up with laws, they always put their interest in it. They always make the law to benefit them. Now, their benefit may be at expense of somebody else. It's always at the expense of somebody else. Or they put their desires in that law. And life will be ruined if man's law is adopted and God's law is ignored. Because when Allah Ta'ala puts a law, He has no interest. His only interest is the happiness of His creation. That's, Allah doesn't get anything from it, whether, you implement the law or you go against the law, Allah gets nothing out of it. But when people put laws, they want to put law to take an advantage and disadvantage somebody else. That's why man is not qualified to to make laws. So when you ask man, go ahead and make a civil law, what do you get? You get homosexuality is normalized, same-sex marriage is okay. You get drugs, we cannot prevent people from doing drugs, so let's give them syringes and drugs so they don't spread diseases. That's what you get. With civil law, that's what you get. You get, a law that says if you divorce, you have to give half of your belongings to your spouse. In some countries, some Muslim countries, they tried it, and rich people stopped getting married. They wouldn't get married, and then life becomes a problem. So you have to follow God's law. You cannot make up laws. You're always going to have unintended consequences, and you're going to have problems. Look at China. Years ago, they made a law that you're only allowed one child. So all of these people wanted a male child, so they used to kill the female children, and now they're stuck with villages where there's no females in it. They all have a nation of males. What do you do with a nation of males? How are you going to continue? Their population is in trouble now because they don't have enough women. They killed all the female babies because somebody came up with that law and didn't observe God's legislation. So any man-made law must have undesirable and dangerous side effects. When you ban executions, when somebody commits a murder on purpose and you ban execution as the punishment, what do you get? You get more of the same. You get more murders. Because now Allah's legislation for a murderer to be executed is a deterrence. You take out the deterrence and you try to act more merciful than Allah, the most merciful, then you pay the price. You pay the price with more crime, more crime. So we have to observe Allah's law because when you kill the murderer, you save lives. And Allah says, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقَصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. In Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 179. And there is for you in legal retribution saving of life, O you people of understanding, that you may become righteous. Execution is a deterrence that saves the life of the victim because the murderer is not going to do it for fear of being killed. And it saves his life as well because they don't want to die. So it saves the murderer and the one who is murdered. It saves both of their lives. And it's meant to be a deterrence, not to go chase people and execute them. When you put God's law first, you have peace in a society. When you decide to become more merciful than Allah, then you pay the price. Because you're going to tell people what? You kill somebody, you go to jail for a few years, and for some people, jail is more luxurious than where they're living. There is no deterrence in that. You'll never find any fault in God's legislation. There is no amendments, there's no side effects. If you implement it, it's from the Creator. He knows what's best for us. It is the perfect legislation and the perfect law to adapt. No other variation is going to work because we don't have the knowledge of and we don't know. Take the cutting the hand of the thief. Western countries scoff at that. It's like, you're barbarians. For somebody to steal and you cut their hand. So what do? In California, just a couple of years ago, if you steal less than $750, we'll just give you a slap on the wrist and release you. What happens? All the shops start closing because people go in there, grab things. What are you going to do? You're going to take me to the police. You're going to, put my name in there and release me. There's no deterrence. But how much money is worth losing your hand over? Again, the point behind Allah's legislation is not the capital punishment. It's the deterrence. How much is something worth you losing a hand over? $1 million? $1 billion? Wallahi, there is no number that you can say, I'm willing to take that risk in order to get that. No. Your hand is beloved to you like the rest of your body. there is no amount that's worth losing it over. It's a deterrence from Allah. When we decide to say, okay, you're not going to lose your hand, you're going to go to jail. Go to jail for what? You got TV, you got health, 3 meals a day, you got, health insurance, you got exercise. For some people, it's like going to a club. There's no deterrence in that. But when you tell people you're going to lose your hand if you steal, now you can sleep with your door open and nobody would ever dare. And we see that in Islamic country that enforce that law, people live in safety. You can leave a cash register open with cash in it, nobody would touch it. Because they value their hand more than they value that money. When we follow Allah's law, that's what happens. When we allow men to legislate, then problems will be, you can count on problems happening. The third and last point I want to point out is why man is not fit to legislate is man's knowledge and ability to prosecute are limited at best. Because the lawbreaker, you may not catch him. There may be no witnesses. Nobody knows everything. They try to think that they can, play God and monitor everything that people are doing to catch people. But there's still, crimes that happen. There's no witnesses. They cannot prosecute these people. Or the lawbreaker could be connected. You may not be able to prosecute them. Maybe not in this country, but in other countries, if you're connected, you do whatever you want. And the police I can't arrest you. I value my life. They get away with it, or they have a lawyer that gets them off. So the ability to prosecute is not there 100%. And any law, for it to be effective, it needs an authority. If there is no authority behind it, it's a suggestion. When you stop at the red light, there's cameras. What do? You stop at the red light, you don't cross the red light. If there is no camera, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you look left and right, and you cross the red light, right? Because there is no witnesses, there's no way to get caught. And any law, if they tell you, look, please don't run the red light, without any retribution, without any authority behind it, what's going to happen? People will run the red light and they won't even care. But when you say, if you cross the red light, you're going to lose your license, you're going to have a big fine, you may even go to jail. Now the authority is behind that law. Now that law means something. It can be enforced. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has the greatest authority because He legislates, He knows, and He is able to punish anyone who breaks His law. In Surah At-Talaq, chapter 65 and verse 12, Allah says, Allahu alladhi khalaqa sab'a samawati wa min al-ardi mithlahun yatanazzalu al-amru baynahunna lita'lamu. It is Allah who has created 7 heavens and of the earth the like of them. He's created the universe. Why did He create the universe? His command descends among them so you may know. You may know what? أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. The reason to create, Allah created this universe is for us to have 2 facts. That the first fact is that Allah is over all things competent. And the second thing is Allah has encompassed all things in knowledge. Allah knows and can exact retribution. When you know that, you will not break His law. He sees you. Where are you going to hide? Where are you going to hide from Allah when you break His law? He sees you, and every cell in your body is at His command. One little clot in the brain, you go crazy, or you go paralyzed, or you lose all your memory. What is a person without their memory? You can be the biggest surgeon on earth. You lose your memory, now you don't know how. Now you're nothing. We are bi'altafillah. We are under Allah's mercy. If we break His law, don't we understand that He sees us and He can punish us over it? That has to be, that has to be something embedded in our every fiber of our being. To know that Allah, there is a creator, He exists, He is one, He is perfect, He knows everything, and He can punish and take account from everyone. When that knowledge is firm in your mind, that is Islam. You've grasped the biggest part of religion, because everything else that you do from that point flows from that, and you will obey Allah, and you will be righteous, and you will not disobey Him, because if that knowledge is firm. And the ending of that verse, the first verse I mentioned, وَلَوْلَا كَلِمَةُ الْفَصْلِ لَقُضِيَ بَيْنَهُمْ وَإِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala will not punish all of the wrongdoers immediately. Some may pass through this life and never get punished. They may never get caught. Allah, in this life, if He punishes somebody, it's a deterrence for everybody else. It doesn't mean that He will punish everyone who commits an infraction. Not in this life. In the hereafter, yes. In the hereafter, justice will be served. But in this life, not all criminals will be punished by necessity. They will be punished as a deterrence for others. And not all good doers will be rewarded. If they are rewarded, it's an encouragement for everybody else. But the hereafter is where justice will be done. وَلَوْلَا كَلِمَةُ الْفَصْلِ. This كَلِمَةُ الْفَصْلِ, I talked about it last week, that Allah's will is to give us the freedom to pursue our interest in that lifespan that He gives us. If you make a mistake, He's not going to punish you from the first mistake. One of the people were caught. I don't know what they were doing, but they got caught in the time of Sayyidina Umar. And he says, Amir, he wanted to give him 80 lashes. I think he was drinking. He was caught drinking alcohol. So he said, it's the first time, don't punish me. He said, you lie. Allah will not expose you from the first time. And then after some interrogation, it's his 8th time. So, Allah will not punish necessarily from the first time. But don't take that as an excuse to keep getting worse and worse, because at some point, Allah Tabaraka Ta'ala will stop you. So, we have time in this life to correct what is wrong. Allah gave us that freedom to come back to Him willingly. He will not force us to come to Him, because that has no value. We come to Him out of love, out of fear to disobey Him. Our relationship with Allah is based on love. That we love our Allah, so we will obey Him. And we have no choice but to be steadfast on His orders and submit to His legislation. And if we ever adopt any other legislation other than Allah's, we will pay the price, as we see all around us. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم فاستغفروه إنه الغفور الرحيم.